Hello community! Today we talk about AI in medicine, MetPrompt. Now look at this. We have here our fine-tuned medical and biomedical language models like MetPrompt and MetPrompt 2. And then we have in blue non-fine-tuned versions that outperform here MetPrompt 2 for examples, like GPT-4 with MetPrompt. And you might ask, how is this possible that a non-fine-tuned model outperforms an intensively fine-tuned model on medicine? Let's explore this in more detail. Look, here in this graph we have in the inner corner, we have GPT-4, the classical GPT-4 Turbo 1106. And then we have here in blue, we have here MetPrompt 2 from Google. And then now comes this thing that is really fascinating here. We have here an extreme performance jump here with GPT-4 in the MetPrompt methodology. And I asked myself, what the is MetPrompt? Now, just to make sure, all those benchmark data are multiple choice data with primarily 4 multiple choices. In one set, you have more than 1,000 questions. Here you have more than 4,000 questions. And sometimes you only have 3 multiple choice answers like yes, no, and maybe. That the whole set is just a multiple choice evaluation will become important later. So let's talk about medicine and let's talk about where is artificial intelligence in medicine today. And I know that you want to ask me, hey, can foundation models like GPT-4 outcompete fine-tuned biomedical models? And now the idea is that you have prompt engineering at the next level so that you have a performance of your GPT-4 without requiring intensive domain-specific medical medicine training. Is this possible? And you might say, hey, what a coincidence that in your last video you had here an easy guide on prompt engineering. And now we move on to the professional prompt engineering. And we learn here from Microsoft. 18 experts from Microsoft now examine here at the end of November 2023. Can foundation model outcompete special purpose tuning in the case of medicine? Okay. Microsoft writes here, we find that GPT-4 benefits significantly from being allowed to design its own prompt design, specifically coming up with its own chain of thought prompting for in-context learning. This is interesting. And then they notice that as scientists, we note that the automated chain of thought reasoning by GPT-4 removes here the dependency on special human expertise and medical datasets. Now I understand here for the scientist, it is great to have here the human expertise out of the equation and the medical datasets out of your equation because you rely only solemnly here on GPT-4 for automated reasoning. But as a patient, I would say this is an interesting move to look at this problem from this perspective. Great. Well, of course, I have to mention other companies. Forbes, you see here, December 17, 2023, Google launches a healthcare-focused LLM. What a coincidence that Google and Microsoft at the same time, at the same week, have here healthcare focus in their corporate strategy. But you will understand that the global healthcare market will reach $188 billion by 2013. And therefore, the healthcare industry is for AI of a special importance. Great. Now, Google goes another way. Google tries here with its cooperation to assist here the physicians with their medical note, their note-taking, by implementing here some apps for a hand-free device. So this app enables physicians to create accurate and timely medical notes directly from their clinical patient conversation and integrate this conversation in real time into the hospital's electronic health record system. So you see, it's another approach. It is more focused here on the human interaction with the patients. But of course, you have AWS. And AWS, Amazon, has also here clinical applications here for recapping here the highlights of patient visits. So it is again more on the summarization part. But of course, if you look at the top 5 consultancies, you see they specialized. For example, Accenture and Deloitte, they use here Google's Med language model, and they have their own offerings for their specific global clients. Great. So we have a significant market. We can have beautiful profits. So let's look at the science. What about these special prompts? What is it? Now, we have in-context learning. We have the old chain of thought. Now we have the graph of thought, but never mind. And when we have this chain of thought in the ICL prompting, like in the MetPrompt work by Google, you have a panel of human clinicians who were asked to draft chain of thought prompts tailored here for complex medical challenging problems that really happen in the hospital. Great. Because what you want to achieve, that the patient leaves the hospital with a smile, everything was perfect. Now here Microsoft says, hey, we find that GPT-4 is capable of autonomously generating high quality, detailed chain of thought prompts, even for the most complex medical challenges. So this is now an interesting approach. If you see, GPT-4 is autonomously solving here the medical challenges of patients. But okay, let's go on. They use here an additional variation of the ensemble methodology. Ensembling is a technique for combining the outputs of multiple model runs to arrive at a more robust result, where you combine all the different outputs, you can average it, you have a consensus, you can weigh it, or you have a majority vote. Now, in this paper, they say that a majority vote happens by the AI on the AI ensemble. So GPT-4 is here performing the majority vote on its own generated multiple outputs by multiple runs. And you can imagine this, yes, self-consistency used here. Or you can have one run at a specific temperature, let's say T equals 0, and you have another run at T equals 0.1. And then you can combine and you look for the best solution at what temperatures and so on. So this ensemble technique is something we know. Now, of course, this ensembling can enhance the performance, but it comes at a cost of increased computational demands. And here Microsoft tells us, for example, Google's MetPrompt 2 ensemble refinement methodology uses as many 44 separate inference runs for a single medical question. So you ask here this high professional MetPrompt 2 44 times more or less the same question, and you look, hey, maybe 30 times I get this identical result, and 3 times I get this result, 5 times I get the other result. So you try to have here quite a lot of separate inference run to be on the safe side. And of course, this is expensive. And now here in this publication by Microsoft, they say due to this computational overhead, this ensembling, they have pursued as a design principle using a simpler technique to avoid this excessive inference cost for computing those separate inference runs. This is an interesting statement, but otherwise, if you remember that some hospitals in the US are for-profit organizations, of course, if you can reduce here, like for example, personal costs, like here the doctor with a suitcase waving goodbye to his arriving patients, and he says, yeah, never mind here, they have the best AI in the country here in this hospital. I understand that avoiding excessive inference cost for a medical treatment of patient can be a theoretical consideration. Okay. I want to give you an example. What is it? We know this as boosted prompt ensemble here in the before this was published. And you have some easy few short prompts like, hey, a patient reports severe chest pain and shortness of breath. What is the likely diagnosis? And AI comes back, GPT-4 says, hey, this symptom suggests a possible heart attack. and you make harder examples and even harder examples, and you continuously test your GPT-4 with a range of medical problems, and you increase here the difficulty. And then you end up with a boosted prompt ensemble, which consists of a series of few-shot examples ranging from common, simple, easy medical conditions to treat to more complex and even rare diseases. So each example builds on the learnings from previous iteration to improve the model's diagnostic accuracy. Beautiful. You know me, and what I noticed, they never ever mentioned limitations. So I asked your ChatGPT-4, hey, but since this is just prompt engineering, none of this boosted ensemble information will alter the trainable weights of our LLM. So the moment this ensemble prompt method is through, if we succeed here the maximum token length, so if we surpass the maximum token length of our system, what happens? And ChatGPT-4 comes back and says, you are correct in your understanding of prompt engineering and its limitation in the context of LLMs. There are, with this methodology, no alteration in the trainable weights. So the LLM learns nothing permanently. It just learns it for the time that in my context length pipeline, I do have all those few-shot examples. And the moment the pipeline fills up, it's gone. So, limitation of maximum token length. If the ensemble of few-shot prompts and the subsequent question exceed this token limit, the model will not be able to process the entire input. And GPT-4 formulates it in a beautiful way. This imposes a practical constraint on how large or how complex the prompt ensemble can be. You can read it, you can understand what is my concern with this particular prompt methodology, but the model is not trained because we understand Microsoft argues this would be too expensive. And I understand GPT-4 to fine-tune GPT-4 here. The complete GPT-4 on medical, I suppose it takes months and thousands and 10,000s of GPUs. So they are looking here for easier, cheaper solution. I understand this. But on the other side, in medicine, okay, whatever. Great, this is this. And I just wanted to make sure. So yes, I had another question, I confess. So I asked, hey, so we design a specific set of instructions, either some few-shot examples or other in-context learning methods like chain of thought sequencing, to achieve here this optimal response by our LLM, GPT-4, but only as long as we fit our advanced boosted prompt ensemble in the maximum context length. And GPT comes back and says, yes, this is an accurate understanding of how prompt engineering, including advanced techniques like boosted prompt and chain of thought sequencing, is applied to GPT-4. So you are looking here for the optimal response within those constraints. Yes, 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 the ensemble must fit within the maximum context length of the model. And then you have to have here a strategic balance, it's a beautiful wording. To achieve an optimal response often involves a strategic balance between including diverse and informative examples in your prompt and keeping the overall prompt concise enough to fit within the token limits. Now, I'm just experimenting here with the V2 model from Microsoft. This has a token limit of 2,000 token, and I think you can forget any try here with this methodology on this model. So you see, we are talking here about a model size that is really significant. Beautiful. So now let's look here at the complete process of MetPrompting. I have here the screenshot from the publication because I want to show this to you. So they start. Given a test example, we choose K training examples that are semantically similar using here a K nearest neighbor clustering in the embedding space. And I said, hey, wait a minute, so we build a vector space, okay, then we have a clustering methodology, okay, and we have training data, the training data set, okay, but what do you mean I take a test example? A test example is, in my understanding, something that, look at this. And I asked GPT-4, hey, I understand we have the training data, we have the validation data set, then we have a third independent test data set in my old-fashioned view of fine-tuning LLMs. And GPT-4 comes back and says, yes, we have the training data set, primary data set used to train the model, then the validation data set to fine-tune here or to tune the hyperparameters of the model. And then we have the test data. And this is a separate data set that is not used during the training or the validation. This is kept aside to test the model after the training process is complete. The test data provides an unbiased of the evaluation of the final model fit and is used to assess how well the model generalizes to new unseen data. So, if I follow now here Microsoft's recipe, so I take a test example and then I choose the training example, you see that I have questions here on this topic, but never mind, let's go on. So specifically, we first use here text embedding, okay, to embed here the training questions with the sentence and the test questions. Again, the test question. I thought maybe this was just a verbal mistype, a misinterpretation, but okay, another. So we have the test questions and the training question, and we embed them as a vector representation. We know this. Beautiful. And then for each test question, so now I believe it's really the test question from the benchmark, otherwise, why would they say test questions? We retrieve its nearest k neighbors from the training dataset. Beautiful. And then they just have a similarity measure like a cosine similarity, and they find, let's say, 5 or 10 real close by neighbors in the cluster. And they say, compared with the classical fine-tuning, this dynamic few shot methodology leverages here the training data, but does not require billions of updates of the model parameter like the trainable weight tensors in GPT-4. So yeah, it's true. With this dynamic few shot ICL, we do not alter here the trainable weight tensors of GPT-4. We do not learn the system something consistently, but we have just here an ICL. So let's summarize this in my own words. At first, before we have a prompt, we take all our medical information, all our medical data, thousands of textbooks and whatever is special literature on medical data, and we build a vector space. And in this vector space, each and every, let's say, sentence of my medical data becomes now a vector in this vector representation. And then I calculate here a very simple mathematical operation, a cosine similarity, for all vectors, for all vector representation, if I want to find vectors that are close by. Okay? Then, if I have my query vector, and I have my close by solution vectors from the clustered data in my vector space, I extract now this close by solutions and design a few shot prompt with these close by solutions. And then I have GPT-4. So I have now these few shot solution exemplars. I put this into GPT-4, and with those few shot examples, GPT-4 generates autonomically a chain of thought reasoning. Plus, from this chain of thought reasoning, it gives us an answer. And finally, we're at the step that we can compare this answer to the ground truth. You see, this is, if you want, the pre-processing before we design a single prompt to GPT-4. We have a complete vector space that we generate, that we build, that we look at all the medical data. Then we decide on one of the dozens of tokenizers. Then we form here the optimal vocabulary for our medical data. We define our token structure. Then we take here, let's say, an encoder structure, an encoder-only structure. We create here a vector embedding in a new constructed vector space. And then we hope that the quality of this vector space is good enough that we extract the close-by solution from the cluster data. We really have relevant few-shot prompts generated that then go into GPT-4, and from those few-shot prompts, GPT-4 constructs hopefully the right chain of sort structure, and from those derives an answer which we then can compare. So this is what I call prompt engineering 2024. My goodness, I've never seen this before. Great. Now what about the actual data? MetPrompt uses here 5 few-shot examples, so 5 neighbors, and goes for 5 parallel API calls for the ensemble procedure. And if all those generated answers, they are then selected for their correctness. So if those answers are correct and matches now the ground truth label, they say, hey, now we store the question, the embedding vector, the chain of sort, and the answer. And then they have the golden vector representation. That is perfect, a perfect medical vector representation. And if you are Microsoft, you have no problem at all to generate this. But if you are like me here, a poor little somebody, nobody, who has not 10,000 GPUs to perform here a medical data vector embedding of I don't know how many trillion medical tokens, I think this is only really for the global players. Okay. Let's put this into an original visualization by MetPrompt, by Microsoft. And you see here at the bottom here, the performance axis, the increase. So for a specific benchmark, never mind which one, if we have just a 0-shot prompt, this is what we achieve. If we put some random few shots in addition, we get a little bit better. If we have to these random few shots now a chain of sort structure generated by GPT-4, look, we jump here quite significantly. So having here few shot examples and a chain of sort deducted from them by GPT-4 in a logical structure really helps. If we go from a random few shot to a nearest neighbor in a mathematically newly constructed vector space, few shot example, from those, GPT-4 creates a chain of sort reasoning logic structure. Then we jump another little bit. And then, in the final step, we do this not just one time, but we go with, 10, 20, 30 times. We run the complete process to GPT-4 and only take the best result of the best results. Then we have an ensemble. And if you remember, I told you we have multiple choice. So we have A, B, C, D. And if we now shuffle those choices, so we do not have A, B, C, D, but we have D, C, B, A, so a shuffle, we receive another little bit of advantage, and then we have here the maximum performance of MetPrompt. Isn't this beautiful? Okay, now to my simple-minded visualization, because I have to understand this and I think about this in my own way. Look, we have a medical question. And now, yes, we have GPT-4 Turbo, but we say now as Microsoft, hey, this is too expensive to fine-tune GPT-4 Turbo every 2 months, every 3 months on the complete new medical data and the new medical knowledge that comes out in the publications. So do we have alternatives? And one alternative is exactly here. We leave here this GPT-4 Turbo not fine-tuned at all, and we put here all our new updated information in a vector space. And we create this vector space simplest with a sentence transformer with SBIRD. And here we read in, 10,000 books from traditional anatomy, neurology, cardiology, whatever. So we have here the combined medical knowledge. So you see, we build something in addition to our GPT-4. However, please note that a vector space has no intelligence at all. The semantic correlation, the information encoded in the medical sentences, is just transferred, represented in a static geometric position as a vector embedding in our vector space. There's nothing else. And the query that we have, if we have then a query and we have all this semantic information, I just do a static cosine mathematical operation to get the nearest neighbor in a specific cluster. Compare this here to our GPT-4, where we have, instead of no intelligence, at least we have a little bit of artificial intelligence. The semantic correlations we have here, an autoregressive transformer network. And the query is not a static mathematical operation, but we have at least here a self-learning neural network process that is happening. But since this is too expensive to train, we move over here. Okay. And then this vector space here generates, and this is here the output. See, here we have MetPrompt here with the nearest neighbor-based few-shot example selection that then GPT-4 takes in, and then GPT-4 generates here from those a chain of thought prompting, and this chain of thought prompting makes GPT-4, enables GPT-4 to come to an answer, and this is the answer that will be evaluated, and if the answer is correct, we save this here in a golden vector space. I have not painted this now golden, but you can imagine this. Beautiful. Just because we do not want to fine-tune GPT-4 Turbo. But okay, you can do this with me. I will follow along. Okay, now if I as a user, let's say I'm a doctor, a medical doctor, and I have a medical question about a patient. Normally I would go to an AI system and ask the AI system, but since now GPT-4 Turbo is not fine-tuned on the medical data, it says, hey, do you want a French sonnet? And I say, no, I want a medical answer. So I say, excuse me, you have to go to the vector space. So not here with MetPrompt by Microsoft, but we are diverted here to a complex vector space. And as I told you, I hope you have the perfect vector space, absolutely streamlined to your medical question, with the absolute best parameterization, with the best tokenizer, with the best implementation here of a token structure. And the list goes on. So it's here, and then we have a vector space, and then we just have a simple cosine operation. And now we have an embedding. So my question becomes now a vector, a question vector. And now I have here my vector space with my question vector. And now I look here close by what are the other 5 few-shot example selections from my training dataset. And those 5 I choose. So you see we have here a static geometry-based selection of solutions. Not a neural network. No. Okay. Beautiful. This then generates us near-based few-shot examples. Go to GPT-4, generate a chain of thought, generate an answer, we validate the answer, and we get the golden dataset. Just to get a prompt. Now you might say as a subscriber of this channel, hey, 11 months ago you did this and you said here, this is a BERT system and this here GPT is here the encoder and the decoder of the complete transformer system, but hey, we don't want to give this information away. So here we are, MetPrompt, summary. We have 2 competing giants, GPT-4, OpenAI, Microsoft, and Gemini Ultra, upcoming for me. And they are fighting here. Who has the best AI system? As I told you, the goal of Gemini Ultra is simple. It has to outperform GPT-4 in every aspect. And as we have here the data by Google, Google says, hey, for all the different benchmark, Gemini Ultra will beat GPT-4. Almost. Beautiful. Now Microsoft says, hey, wait a second. This is my GPT-4 1106. This is here somewhere at, let's say, 86% accuracy. This damn Gemini Ultra by Google reaches 90. So what can I do if I do not want to fine-tune this now, the medical data set? So they came up with, you see now here in this dark orange and this light orange here, with MetPrompt. And if you do here 5 ensemble runs with MetPrompt, look, you jump here from this to this level. And if you do 20 ensemble runs, you jump here to this light orange. And if you do 31 ensemble run on MetPrompt, plus a secret methodology we call MetPrompt Plus, which is more or less just a confidence score on GPT-4 generated answers, and you only take the best answer that GPT-4 tells you this is my best answer, then you have this 0.5 jump. So you jump over the performance of Google's 90.04, and you have now with Microsoft 90.1. So your GPT-4 1106 with MetPrompt 31 plus super secret sauce is now outperforming Gemini Ultra. Congratulations! My goodness. So you see why we went through the whole exercise. It is always fascinating here to see two giants trying to outcompete each other, and we can learn a lot from this. I never thought that with this MetPrompt methodology that you prepare vector spaces for the optimization of prompt engineering and you make multiple runs and you have an evaluation by GPT-4. By the way, it fails if you use anything else than GPT-4, but this would be another topic. You see, you can achieve something, and this is a constructed result, but nevertheless, Microsoft tells us it outperforms Gemini Ultra. Great. However, and I have to stress this, Microsoft is here absolutely perfect, and they tell us, hey, listen, while we're excited about all of this, please note that we are cautious about taking this performance, and we note that the methods will be valuable. We are cautious that the methods will be valuable in the practice of medicine in the open world. So I think we clearly understand that this is here a beautiful mathematical optimization, but the amount you have to run through, the data you have to prepare, the vector embeddings you have constantly to update, to fine-tune everything else, my goodness, the amount of GPT-4 you need here for the internal evaluation and the optimization and the ensemble optimization. These are costs that, wow, I don't know if a for-profit hospital is willing to invest in this, but this is another topic. I was talking Microsoft is doing here some absolute serious work, and I say, congratulations. They also say, hey, while we believe that the MetPrompt strategy can be adapted to non-multiple choice settings, performance benchmarks, we did not explicitly test this proposed adaptations on benchmarks. So they are absolutely fair to say, hey, this works for multiple choices, and we have not tested if you have no multiple choice. Imagine you have to write a sentence and not just cross A, B, or C. If you have to give a verbal response, we don't know if MetPrompt will work at all. Wow, this was quite a ride. So here we have it, MetPrompt. You might ask, what can we learn from this? I think for the vector store, this might be a second life for RAG. Because imagine, you cannot just use the vector store to input here a simple cosine similarity, but now you can use vector store for prompt engineering 2.0 if you have some integrated GPT-4 evaluation runs plus some GPT-4 induced chain of thought prompting example generation. My goodness, here I see here for the whole industry of the vector store a complete new second application of their technology. Or you just fine-tune the model and you have a permanent memory. This model remembers everything and you have a constant performance. It's completely up to you which way you choose, but I think from a theoretical point of view, this was an interesting publication by Microsoft. It would be great to see you in my next video.